you give this team a great big hand? Appreciate you guys and your worship this morning. Amen. You may be seated. Listen, welcome. My name is Lawrence. Great to be with you this morning. I don't know, I feel like, when Amanda gave that invitation to come and bow, I kind of felt within me that's what I should do. So God forgive me. I just didn't know if a guest speaker is allowed to do that or not, right? Can I come and do this? But what a beautiful, there's nothing better than to hear a room full of people singing and saying, holy, there's no one like you. I hope that really is what you mean. I hope that's your experience with God, that you have discovered there is no one like him. And we hope that becomes even more of a part of your life today. So it's good to have you here. My name is Lawrence. My wife Penny and I are here. I'm one of the pastors at the Shippensburg campus. And it's been a while since I've been with you, but it's great to be back just to see familiar faces, to meet some new faces. We love what happens at Shippensburg, and we applaud you guys all the time for what's happening and what you're allowing God to do here. I'm so sorry that you had to get me both on the announcements this morning and live in person. That's kind of a little bit of overload, especially since the fact that I dressed the same for both. Actually, I should have looked at that before, but anyway, good to be with you. And in case you missed the opening announcements, Penny and I just bring you a happy Thanksgiving to you and your families and from all of us at Shippensburg. How many of you have ever heard of the Butterball Turkey Hotline? Have you heard of that? So this is the hotline that you use to know how to make your Thanksgiving turkey. This is true. This actually happens. There's a room of about 20 to 30 people that are sitting around answering phones on Thanksgiving Day. And if you are stuck with knowing how to prepare that turkey, if you still do that, you just call in and ask them. They receive 10,000 phone calls every Thanksgiving Day. 10,000. The number one question is, my turkey's frozen. What do I do? It's still frozen. And some people even ask the questions, is it okay if I put it in the dishwasher? Yes, the dishwasher. Is it okay if I wrap it up in an electric blanket? And they have all these questions. Well, there's this whole room full of experts that are there to answer your questions. So I had this thought, great thought. I think it came about Thursday of this week. It's too late to do anything about it this week, but this year. But I decided that we're going to do, and I may need your help with this, but we are going to do a Grand Point Church Butterball Turkey Hotline next year. Seriously, it's going to go something like this. Now, I'm going to need your help because the ringtone is gobble, gobble, gobble. All right? So when I count to three, you give me the ringtone, and I'm going to kind of give you a script of what came into my mind so far. You ready? It's a little interaction here. 1, 2, 3. Stop. Hello, this is Grand Point Church Butterball Turkey Hotline. How can I help you? Oh, your turkey's too big to fit in the pan. Does not fit in the pan. Okay, ma'am, there's two options. Number one, you could get a bigger pan. But from the experts, we would just suggest that you put your turkey in multiple pans. That's right, just cut your turkey up and put it in multiple pans. Of course you'll need multiple ovens to do this. Oh, that's okay if you don't have more than one oven. You just find one somewhere in town that's not being used. Or better yet, you find an oven in the next town that's not being used and put your turkey in there. We call this multi-site. One turkey, multiple ovens. All right, some of you didn't get that. Let me explain. If you are new to Grand Point Church, right, or you don't know who we are one church that meets in multiple locations. Right, one church. So we have a church at Shippensburg. We have a meeting here at Shippensburg. And if you were here on October 20th, on Vision Sunday, you heard me coming through the video announcing a brand new campus coming in Greencastle, Pennsylvania in March of 2021. Now, the reason that we do this, the reason that we are multi-site is because we believe that it's really important and ideal for you to go to church in the community where you live. Now, let me just clarify that by saying, if you live in Greencastle, or you live in Hagerstown, or you live somewhere else, and God called you to Shippensburg, you better be here. Right? Don't you leave if God called you here. But if you're kind of undecided yet or not quite sure where that is, we believe that taking church to your community is going to be a good thing for you. And just what happened here at Shippensburg is exactly what we're expecting to happen at Greencastle in just a little bit over a year. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of what God is doing at Grand Point Church. This is a great time. It's a great time to be part of Grand Point Church. It really is. And so I'm so excited to be here at the Shippensburg campus to meet you, bring you greetings, and bring you a message this morning. Pastor Kevin, thank you for this great privilege to do this. And I'll be bringing the last message today on the series called Code of Honor. And because we're talking about honoring people that God brings into our lives, I do want to take this moment just to honor Pastor Kevin and Crystal for their great work that they've done here at Shippensburg campus. By the way, things like this just don't happen. They happen with great leadership. They happen with commitment. So I just want to take this time to honor you guys. Thank you. Appreciate all that you've done for us. And yeah, you can stand and whoop and holler, whatever. You know, it's kind of like when you have your first child, they don't get away with anything. You're pretty hard on them. By the time you have your third or fourth kid, they can do anything that they want to, right? This is our first multi-site campus, our first multi-site campus pastor, and Kevin and Crystal stepped out with a great amount of faith, great courage, and great risk to make this happen, but God has just used them in an incredible way, so we're thankful for that. Code of honor. We use that word honor a lot as an adjective, and we talk about honor roll, honor society, honorable mention, honor, and we use it as an adjective. But in the Bible, when that word is used as a noun, it means esteem, value, and great respect. So when we're talking about honor and how we honor each other, it is with esteem, it is with value, and it is with great respect. On Wednesday of this week, I did a funeral service, and it had a state police escort from the funeral home to the burial site. This was a beautiful thing, and we're going down this road, and there was a road construction, and so it was narrowed down to one lane. There was a flag person at the front end, a flag person at the back, and then the procession came through. And when the procession went through this work site, every single one of those workers removed their hard hats, put it over their heart, and stood at attention as the procession went through. That's honor. That's honor. And then we're driving down the road, and the opposing traffic pulls over to the side and stops because there's a funeral procession. Most likely it was because of the state police escort, but regardless whether they were in respect to the authorities or the funeral, they pulled over to the side, and I'm thinking, man, this is amazing. People still honor. People still show respect. And so today, I want to talk to you about a topic that I've never been this specific with before in a message. And I don't know, I hope it doesn't make you uneasy. I'm a little bit uneasy. You understand now why Kevin asked me to do this message, right? But I want to talk to you today about what it means to honor people of the opposite sex that God brings into your lives. Men, how do you honor the women in your workplace, at the gym, at the church? Women, how do you honor men in your workplace as well, the men that are in your lives? I want to talk about this because I don't know where you're at with the Me Too movement, where you stand with that, how you lean into that or not. I feel like in a lot of ways the men in our culture today have a huge apology that we need to make to women. In the way that they've been treated over the past and the way that things have been kind of covered and dealt with. Men that reach places of high power demand unfairly a lot of things from women. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today. How do we honor women in the workplace, and how do men, and this is going to go both ways, but because the story that I'm going to use in the Bible is really about a man needing to show honor to a woman, it's going to be kind of leaning that way a little bit. But the reverse is also true. See, now, the Me Too movement is actually described as the world's first mass introduction, right, or mass response to sexual abuse. But I would just want to say this. I think we have already had a response to sexual abuse a long time ago. It's just that we've ignored it. So what I'd like to do today is take this Bible story from 2 Samuel chapter 11, and I want to talk a little bit about the life of David. That's what we've been doing in this series. We're talking about the life of David and all the things that he has done and performed in his life. And today we're going to talk a little bit about David and the way that he dishonored a woman in a great way. So this series has been showing us the importance of honoring people that God brings into our lives. And we're going to talk today about a code of honor that will work with you in relating to people of the opposite sex. Now, to dive into this, let me use the story from 2 Samuel chapter 11. David is now about 50 years old. So this past week, it was Thursday of this week, I was in a phone conversation with the executive director of our denomination, and we were discussing an issue, a big issue that's going on right now in the country of Bangladesh that we have to deal with, and it has to do with some leadership. So in the course of the conversation, I suggested or proposed the name of a certain person that might be able to step in and take some interim leadership in the ministry there. And the executive director on the other end of the line said, "Oh, yeah, Lawrence, but this guy's no spring chicken anymore. He's like 59 or 60 years old." I turned 60 in 29 days. I do. I'm on the other end of the line thinking, this guy just called me an old crow or so. At least I'm not a spring chicken anymore. But so you know what? When you reach 50, and I don't know how many of you are 50 or older, but when you reach 50, you like to think that everything stupid is behind you. You know what I mean? Like you've lived through your college days and your young adult days and all those days you're trying to figure out life and did some stupid things. When you get to the age of 50, stupid is behind you, right? Well, the story that we're going to look at today is a guy that's 50 plus years old. He's stupid. He made a stupid move. By the way, the big idea that I want to take that you want to take away today is this. And this might not sound very spiritual, but I think this is good for you to remember, and that is this. Every single one of us is one decision away from stupid. One decision away from stupid. It takes one decision for you to kind of mess up your life, do something that's going to hurt somebody else, and at least bring dishonor into relationships. So here we go, 2 Samuel chapter 11. David did a lot of things well, right? We heard a lot of great things about him. He distinguished himself as a man of God. He was a poetic writer. He wrote a lot of the Psalms. He was a faithful shepherd. He was a valiant warrior. He was a great leader of his people. He did so many things right. In fact, he was not only a man of passion, but also a man of great compassion. Last week when Kevin was doing the message on kindness, he used the illustration of David inviting a guy by the name of Mephibosheth into his house to sit at the king's table. And he did that to show him kindness because he was of the line of Jonathan, David's best friend. That was 2 Samuel chapter 9, and then what happens in 2 Samuel chapter 10 is David continues to show kindness because he hears about the king of the Ammonites who just died. This is a country close to Israel, but outside of them, and the king just died. So David in his kindness said, listen, I just want to show some kindness to the king's family. I'm going to send a delegation of people from my tribe over to the Ammonites to show respect. So he's like, I want you guys to go to the viewing and just show some respect. So the Ammonites are over here, and they see all these boys from Israel coming, and they're like, wait a minute. They're not coming to show respect. They're coming to spy on us. And so here's what they did. Now, don't ever tell me that the Bible is boring. This is actually hilarious. But these Ammonites, they ganged up on the guys from Israel. They shaved off half their beards and then cut off their tunics or their garments at the buttocks. This is in the Bible. 2 Samuel chapter 10. So now, this whole Israelite army is marching home in their whitey-tighties with half of a beard. Right, and they come back to David, and David's like, what the heck happened to you guys? And so they told him what the Ammonites did, and David's like, you know what, I can just imagine David just kind of hold back from laughing. But he's like, guys, why don't you just take some time off? Go back home, take a break until your beards grow back, and then come back. And that's what they did. So they go back home, and they're taking this break, and they're letting their beards grow, and and then they come back. And this brings us right to 2 Samuel chapter 11, which is where our story takes place today. They came back at springtime, and at springtime, the custom was, this was like clockwork. Every spring, the Israelite army would go out, and they would siege another country. They would seize another city that were their enemies. It's kind of like spring training. It's just what you do, right? And so they came back at springtime, and it says in 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1, in the spring, at the time when the kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. Guess who they attacked? They destroyed the Ammonites. These boys that shaved their beards off and cut their coats off. They sieged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. This is very uncommon. Kings do not do this. When a king sends his army out, the king always goes with them. Always. In fact, the king is like the front man. He's the point man with the army. That's just what you do if you're a king. But in this particular case, it says David stayed behind. He sent his army, but he's back at home. We don't know why. The Bible doesn't tell us why, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Right? Maybe he called in sick. Right? Just wasn't feeling good, so he stayed back. All we do know is that he was in bed. And verse 2 says this. One evening, David got up from his bed, and he walked around on the roof of the palace, kind of a little terrace, rooftop terrace, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. You need to know that the Bible very seldom uses the word very. In fact, if it does, it's not some kind of an exaggeration, but it means, as in this case, she was very, very beautiful. This was a beautiful woman. It's not an exaggeration. Now, if something is beautiful, it's attractive, and attractive things attract, right? So what do you do? If you see something beautiful, you're going to look at it. So if there's a beautiful building, a beautiful landscape, it's going to get your attention. If there's a beautiful woman, it's going to get your attention. That's what beauty does. It attracts. Attractive attracts. So ladies, if you see your man looking at another woman before you backhand him, right? Just give him the benefit of nature, right? Show him a little grace of nature. If it's an attractive woman, he most likely is going to look. It can go the other way too, but often, guys are going to look at an attractive woman. So guys, you're going to see attractive women in your workplace. You're going to see attractive women at the gym. And I can't confirm this or really defend it, but I'm thinking that with all the women in Franklin County, the most attractive women go to Grand Point Church. You don't know what to do with that, do you? So some of you guys are like, do I say something? I guarantee you, whatever you say, you're going to have to defend on the way home. So be careful how you say it. But you can whoop and holler over that because we have attractive people coming here. My point is this. Guys, we're going to see attractive women all over the place. Workplace, gym, community, your circle of friends, even at church. And so we're going to look because you're attractive, right? Now, here's the thing. Here's where, ladies, you can do the backhand. If that look goes further than just a look, right, then you have something to deal with. Because then you come to a place of honor versus dishonor. And I'm going to unpack this in a moment. But I want to show you what David did. This is a good time for me to remind you again, our main point is everyone is just one decision away from stupid, okay? So far we're okay. David is now on his rooftop. He's taking a walk on his roof. He looks down and he sees an attractive woman taking a bath. And he's at this point, it doesn't appear that David did anything wrong. He has not crossed any moral boundaries. It doesn't even look or appear that like he's up to no good. No, he just needs a break. He gets out of bed, goes outside to get some fresh air. He looks and he sees something that he shouldn't, and oops, he now has to make a decision, right? I'm wondering if there might not be something more going on here than what it appears. And here's why I say that. David appears innocent. But what we need to understand is that during this particular time, women would take ceremonial baths late in the day. So it was either late afternoon or early evening. They would take these ceremonial baths on their rooftop. Now, you need to understand in the culture, they did not have these nice clawfoot tubs in their house with this porcelain knob that had a big H on for hot, right? They didn't have that. So what they would do is they'd put these containers out on their roof, and they would collect the rainwater, and then they'd wait during the day for the sun to warm that water so that the women could take their baths late in the day or late in the evening. It's kind of the way it worked. Now, if you research this a little bit, you're like, man, that's odd. That's like public kind of stuff. Well, there was a 4-foot privacy wall that they had around these tub areas. So they had their privacy. Now, you need to remember that David is the king. He's living in the palace. And the palace is located on a hill, and it overlooks all the other homes within the community. David knew this. He knew that. And on the palace rooftop, David had access to all the channels. He had the internet filter turned off, right? He knew what was out there, and he really could get a glimpse of anything that he wanted to. It kind of makes me wonder if this was even the first time. Or had he been there before and known that the women are taking their bath at this time of the day? Had he known what he could see, right, if he was there? I'm even wondering if this is the reason why he did not go out to the battle. Because, see, when you become so consumed with something that is outside of the boundaries of God's will for you, sometimes it determines the course of your life. It determines where you go and what you do and what time you're at these places. So it makes me wonder, now all this is speculation, and I don't want to go too far on speculation, but all we do know is that David is on the rooftop. He sees Bathsheba, and he has a decision to make. And at this moment, he will either live by a code of honor, and he will treat this woman with esteem, value, and great respect. Or he will dishonor her and make a move on her. We honor women. Guys, we honor women when we see them, but we see them as created in the image of God and designed for God's holy purposes. We cease to honor women when we see them and we look at them and try to figure out how can they please us. You see the difference? That's the difference between honor and dishonor. Well, curiosity got the best of David, so he compromises with a half step. And in verse 3, David sent someone to find out about her. He calls one of his servants and he says, hey, you see that woman over there? Go check her out. I want to see who that is. Well, the man said, now watch this. This is important when it comes to honor. The man said, isn't that Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Three things he points out. Do you see what David is saying here? He's saying, David, she's more than a beautiful body. She is more than something just for your pleasure. She is an individual. She is Bathsheba. She is a woman created in the image and the likeness of God, created for God's holy purposes. David, she's somebody's daughter. She is Eliam's daughter. And then the third thing that David says is this: David, she's somebody's wife. She's Uriah the Hittite's wife, and not only the wife of anyone, but Uriah the Hittite. David, he's one of your most honored warriors. Right? He's your first in command, so at least out of respect for him, shouldn't you honor her? It's an incredibly significant statement, by the way. This servant is on mission, and he offered the king a subtle warning of wisdom. The servant saw this woman as an individual. He saw her as somebody's daughter, and he saw her as somebody's wife. That's how he looked at her. By the way, guys, that's a great way to kind of run through that grid when you see an attractive woman. She is created in the image and the likeness of God. She is designed for God's holy purposes. She's somebody's daughter, and she might even be somebody's wife. She's not yours, right? So that's how you kind of show honor. Well, the servant came back and said, David, what are you thinking? Right? But he doesn't even seem to register with David. He could do the right thing at this moment and choose to honor this woman, but he blows off all that advice that his servant gave him. He sent the messenger to get her. She came back to the palace, and he slept with her. I don't know if you know this story or not, but a couple weeks later, it was kind of like a one-night thing. She leaves, goes back to her home. A couple weeks later, she sends a message to David saying, David, I'm pregnant. Now he has another decision to make, right? Either he could come clean with this, choose to honor her and come clean with this, or dishonor her and try to cover it up. By the way, almost every cover-up is dishonoring somebody. You have a sexual sin that you're hiding, that you're covering, most likely it is dishonoring somebody in your life. Even if it's a woman that's online, or in a photo or whatever it is, you're dishonoring that woman if you're using her for your own pleasure. It's kind of the way it is. Right? To honor her would be to see her and say, you know what? She is created for God's holy purposes. She's somebody's daughter, and she might even be somebody's wife or future wife. Well, David kind of blew all that off, and he chooses to cover up. And here's what he did. He invites her husband, Uriah, back from the battlefield, and he says, man, Uriah, you're doing such a great job out there. You're working so hard. I just want you to take the weekend off. Get a little R&R. Right? So go with your wife and just go away, spend some time with her, because he's thinking that if he does that, then he'll think that the baby is his. Uriah was a man of honor. And he's like, you know what? I've got a bunch of guys out there in the battlefield. There's no way I can do this, David. I can't have my guys out in the battlefield and then me go spend time with my wife. So he refused to spend time with her. In fact, he slept outside outside of the palace. David's like, oh, man, this didn't work. So plan B. He brings Uriah back and he says, Uriah, you know what, man, you need to get back out there. But he sends a message to Joab and says, hey, put him on the front line. Most likely at a place where he will be attacked and most likely killed. It's exactly what happens. It's exactly what happens. Uriah goes back. He goes into the front line. The enemy attacks, and he and his frontline men are all killed. By the way, this is just an aside, but you see how cover-up affects a lot of people? Man, I don't know who all was killed there, but it put Joab in a place where he had to plan the murder. And that's what it was. This was a planned murder. So you see how a little dishonor at the very beginning leads into a huge mess in the end. We choose one decision that is dishonorable to some member of the opposite sex, and it leads down a path of absolute destruction. So that's where he's at, and Uriah was a man who lived by the code of honor, and he was killed. You see the irony in this? Here was Uriah, who had every right to be with a woman, and he chose not to. And here is David, the king, who had no right to be with this woman, but he chose to do that because he dishonored her. Well, remember, David was a guy. He had everything going for him. He was successful in everything that he did. He was even described as a man after God's own heart. How does this happen to somebody like that? See, when he was anointed king, he was the least likely of all the candidates to become king at that moment. We talked about this in the first message of this series. But it's David and all of his brothers standing in line. And the first guy comes along. I think his name was Eliab. God says, nope, it's not him. Second guy, nope, it's not him. All the way down the line until they get to David, and God says, he's my man. Because of his heart. And this is where we get that scripture where it says, man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks where? God looks on the heart. He saw the heart of David, and he's like, that is my man. That's who I want to be king. So he had it right. He had it right at that moment. And in that moment when he was chosen as king, when God saw his heart, most likely he would have honored anybody that would have been brought before him. I'm thinking at that moment, David would have honored women, shown respect to them and value to them. But something happened. When he became king, we can read about this in the scriptures, but when David became king, you know, he was still this man after God's own heart, but he started violating the very scriptures, right? God said, I do not want you to do this. I do not want you to do this. By absolute no means, I don't want you to take any other women, which was very popular in that day to be a polygamist. And God says, I don't want you to do that, David. And David did. He started making some decisions along the way. And when it came time for him to make that decision on the rooftop, that was not his moment of decision. David made some decisions before that. And here's a great lesson for all of us. Never wait until the heat of temptation for you to make a decision. You've got to decide ahead of time. And here's the thing. You make these decisions deep in your heart that you will You will not defile yourself. You will not dishonor someone of the opposite sex. You will not step into this sin. You make those decisions before the decision comes, right? Now, Proverbs gives us the answer to this, and I think this is a good takeaway for you. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 26, I believe that's the text. Proverbs 4, verse 23 says this: guard your heart. Guard your heart. If you don't ever want to fall into a place of dishonoring someone of the opposite sex, dishonoring that woman in the workplace, at the gym, within your friendship, within your church, dishonoring that man that you have to work for and work with, if you don't want to fall into that place of dishonor, then guard your heart, because it is the wellspring of life. See, your life is not going to depend on your circumstances. The life that you live is not going to depend on what people do to you or how they give you things. Your life is not going to depend on the decisions you make and the own willpower that you have, but your life is going to be shaped by the very condition of your heart. Do not follow your heart. Guard your heart. Guard your heart. For it is the wellspring of life. If David would have guarded his heart, most likely when he walked out onto that rooftop, or most likely he would have been in the battle. But even if he was home for legitimate purposes, when he walked out on that rooftop, he would have made the right decision. He would have chosen to honor that woman rather than dishonor her. I think the same thing is true for us. We have many opportunities in life, in relationships, to honor or dishonor those people that God gives to us, that God brings into our lives. I want us to be a church. I want us to be a people who show honor to everyone that we meet. Guys, we don't need any more failures. The only reason that businessmen and anchormen and politicians and athletes and pastors and other people, the reason that they fall into sexual sin, the reason that they go down is because somewhere along the line they've stopped guarding their hearts. Never really happens in a big moment, but it happens in little moments of disobedience when you let your heart unguarded. That's when Satan begins to step in and begins to give you those doubts. And then we fall into that place of extreme dishonor. Man, we have such an opportunity, and I think this all comes down to the very fact is, what do you do with God? Do you honor God or not? Because the very moment that you begin to disobey God, right, that's when you stop honoring Him, and then the rest of your life kind of just falls in place. If there's anything I want to say to you today, church, is this. I want you to show God the greatest honor that you can ever give. The song set that we sang this morning could not have been better chosen for this message than what it was. Amazing. We began by saying, kind of search my heart. Kind of search my heart. And may that be our prayer, that you would allow just God to search your heart. See where you are right now. Because if there's any kind of open door for dishonoring those people of the opposite sex in your life, it's only a matter of time until it will work its way out. And then you'll live in that place of dishonor. I'm going to ask that you would pray with me. I want to pray for all of you this morning and for myself, that God would just allow us to come to that place of full honor with those people that He puts into our lives. God, today this was such a reminder to us that we live in a culture, obviously, where we know full well that there's been a lot of dishonor as it relates to how men treat women, how we look at women, how we value them, and perhaps even the other way around, where women sometimes do not show the respect and esteem to men. God, my prayer would be that in this beauty of multi-gender relationships that we're able to have in all of our lives, my prayer would be that even with this topic that we don't even talk about very much, that you would help us to live with a code of honor that honors those special people in our lives, and so that we would get to that place by guarding our hearts so that we would not fall into that place of dishonor. And God, most of all, may we just honor you with all that we are and all the value that we can give you. And I pray this in Jesus' name.